average shows, some okay shows, quite low-key. Can you explain just more about your job at HBO so that when we're talking about those series we can understand where you sit in it?
Of course. So I oversee drama series, and thank you, Nicola, for the very gracious introduction. I should have said that first. So I oversee both development and production on the hour-long shows. As everyone knows, both here and in the States, what's a drama, what's a limited series, what's a mini-series, all these categories are sort of in flux a bit right now. But for the most part, that's ongoing hour-long shows, such as some of the ones you saw there, development on the upcoming programs, and then HBO has prided itself on an integrated approach to both development and current, so the ongoing series as well. So there's a continuity of executive and voice on our side from development stage all the way through, ideally all the way through the entire run of a show. And increasingly there's limited series. And to a degree, these categories are starting to mean something. Limited series versus the mini-series seems to be more historical, and the limited series is, to the degree these categories mean something, sort of fiction. So True Detective is an ongoing series. Obviously, we've done 2 seasons, but we're also doing a series with Steve McQueen that begins production later this fall. That's a 6-episode run. We're doing one with Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman. That'll also be a 1-year run based on Big Little Lies, novel by Lyle Moriarty. So a kind of range of stuff.
Which kind of although the talent that you mentioned straight away is kind of talent that we can only dream of getting in the UK, is that a big part of what HBO looks for? Do you when you're looking in development, is the first thing you look at the script, or is it the talent attached to the script?
It's, when we're buying development, it can be a lot of things, to be honest, because it may be the idea, it may be a writer, it may be a piece of talent that's interesting and you want to see whether it can happen. But when you're evaluating whether something goes forward, we're mostly at script stage at that point. So occasionally something is packaged. Packaged is even the wrong word. Steve McQueen had an idea, so we were in discussion trying to find something. He had an idea, so we developed it with him. And we're fortunate enough, but in terms of some of the actors you see on the network, we're fortunate enough to have material that draws, great scripts draw great actors. And I think for a certain level of star, a certain level of actor, first and foremost, I should say, cinema's changed. So, there's a certain kind of movie that they're allowed to do, by and large, and I don't think it fully satisfies them. And so, interestingly though, you say you would be jealous of this. In England, there's a longer tradition of more fluid relationship, I think, for actors between cinema, stage, and television. And, so what's old here, I think, is becoming new in America.
But have you noticed the difference with the type of actors who will be in your productions?
100%. Certainly this, when I was in film, you said 10 years ago, the list of film actors that would do television, that was the small list. Now the small list is the list of film actors who won't do television. So it's sort of gone, to be honest. The question is still about how long, I think it's not just about stature. Some people like to, work on one thing and be done. So, what you still see are some variation, whether someone will do a 6-year commitment or multi-year commitment versus 1 year.
And talking about your development in film as opposed to in television, is there a big difference in the way you've worked between the two?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the biggest shift, things are in flux right now in terms of just all the kinds of talent in television, but is to writer-driven media versus director-driven media. So I was fortunate to work at very high-minded, ambitious film producers and directors, but you can have a great idea and an okay writer, or okay script, and you sort of cobble it together and you force it together and you work on it forever and you kind of get it to be good or maybe great, but that kind of laborious effort, and then you make it. Television's the opposite. I mean, at least certainly the way HBO approaches it in a great way, which is, the script's either great or it's not. And if you don't think a writer can go all the way with it and can, has a vision, which, the entire thing is built around whether a writer has a vision not just for that pilot, but for sometimes 1 year, but frankly, mostly it's for a multi-year. And if you don't believe in that person with absolute conviction, and they don't believe in it with absolute conviction, to be honest, just as importantly, you're nowhere, And a good idea in television doesn't mean the same thing. It's not as concept-driven. You see a lot of concept-based television now, but it's in terms of success in television, it's all over. Very generic ideas, brilliantly executed, thrive in television. When film, the idea matters. There's sort of core concept, even in an art film, matters more.
Yeah, and so the development process. Is it the typical, what we hear from America, which is it has to go to pilot, there's a lot of emphasis on that pilot, and then you'll develop a series, or do you now commission series straight away?
Yeah, there are fewer and fewer rules for us and for our competition. Sometimes about how it's presented to us. If it's there's still traditional development. Someone has an idea, beginning of something that seems exciting and inspired, and you take a crack at it, and he or she writes a script, you work on it for a bit, it turns out well, you commission the pilot, and you go forward, and you build it that way. But frequently now you'll be submitted something either fully packaged, or a writer may frankly have written a lot more than that. So on some level, the decision-making changes. Because we don't have the pilot process. It's not arbitrarily designed. It's meant to it's a development process, literally. So in a way, it's R&D, and you're watching a writer or creator build it. If it comes in fully baked, on some level, talent is fairly and rightly asking for a bigger commitment at that stage, and so we evaluate on a case-by-case basis if we're open to going, so making a bigger commitment.
So, for example, did you do a pilot of the first series of True Detective?
No.
Right.
So,
and did that come to you with those actors attached?
It did.
Right.
It did, but there's no but. They were attached.
And how many scripts did you have?
We had 2 scripts and a Bible. We had developed with Nick Pizzolatto a script prior, so I had a relationship with him and knew he was incredibly talented and knew his novels as well. And it's a pleasure of the job. There was some discussion with him prior, but when he came in to pitch the show, some of it you're just, these jobs are gut, and so passion, conviction, thoroughness. You're looking for someone who breathes it, and you see is it in them fully? And the first 2 scripts, you've seen the show, were quite good. So, but also there was something Nick was desperate to say and capture and render, and you went for it. Those actors, Matthew, Woody's been a major, and both of them have been obviously stars for a really long time. Matthew, though, was, when we were submitted it, he was submitted attached as the Russ Cole role. That was, frankly, reading the scripts at that point in his career was a surprise. And there was some thought it was a typo on the letter. They had seen, though, and to give Nick tremendous credit, they had watched Killer Joe, which based on the Tracy Letts, Great American Playwrights play that William Friedkin had done. And that was kind of the beginning of Matthew opening up and sort of showing this other side of himself as an actor. So we then saw that too and went with it. It was great.
And so in terms of the greenlighting of it, the going ahead to production, did that come from those 2 scripts and the Bible?
Yeah.
Or did he write more when you got it right?
Yeah. And it carried for Conagro. It was that was a full pack. He was
right.
Fantastic.
And so the idea to have one director on all 8 episodes, is that something new to HBO, or is that something that you've done frequently? HBO has done it prior. Tom Hooper had done it on John Adams, so we've always been open to it. Our schedules are very long, so the 8 episodes for one director is hard, just physically taxing and really exhausting. At the same time, there's the benefit of a singularity of vision, obviously, of production vision. So you look at it on a case-by-case basis. It also depends on the showrunners, to be honest, and how much of a visual language they have themselves, and how much they want to bring in a director to really realize it or not. The core value we aspire to is a continuity of aesthetic, I think, and aesthetic ambition. And the biggest, we never want to be in the position we certainly have placed ourselves in this position at times, of making a kind of stellar pilot or, establishing a kind of production that can't be sustained. So one director in the abstract gives you, is obviously a safer bet. At the same time, we work with tremendous directors with deep television background. They have a great success with that. So. But thinking about that, when you had Boardwalk Empire and Martin Scorsese's directing the pilot, and the rumours about how much money is spent on the pilot, I'm sure, aren't true, but
absolutely not.
$100 billion kind of thing. Is it a concern? Do you think do people have to copy Martin Scorsese? Is he set a house style? Are there people you have in mind at the beginning? Is it about just doing the pilot, or does he see it over? And also, how do you give notes to Martin Scorsese?
Gently. The short answer, I don't have a short answer, but we're very open about it. The production, the sort of continuity of style. We're open dialogue with Terry Winter. We're in it again on vinyl right now, which is you saw there was some footage in there from it. So yes, you have an open conversation with Scorsese, with Terry Winter. In Boardwalk Empire, we were fortunate to have the brilliant Tim Van Patten, who's a tremendous director and producer himself, and some continuity of crew in that first season, which makes it in department heads, which can make a huge difference. And yeah, you look at it very, very closely. You build budget, schedule, design, all elements around it. And frankly, you also have a brilliant cast, so that's some of your safety net. But yeah, it's a lot of work, yeah. So we're not winging it. We may not get it right, but we're conscious of vinyl. That's been Alan Coulter is serving that role, and we brought in a number of really remarkable directors to do episodic work. S.J. Clarkson actually did an episode, I think it was on a panel earlier today. And similar kind of challenge, and we're hopeful we've matched it. There's a reality to Scorsese. He's one of the greatest directors alive on the planet. So the burden of saying, it'd be disingenuous to say you can do the same as him. That's not the case. But what you can do is have a show that matches, let's say, the scale and ambition of it, and has a continuity of it, even if there's a singularity to what he's able to achieve. And
does Martin Scorsese do a pilot and then reshoot? Sorry, I'm just fascinated. Well, if things aren't right within that pilot, would you ask Martin?
Hasn't happened yet, but yeah, he shot. Speaking of the process, both times he engaged in the traditional pilot process. So. And
is that pilot the episode one that we see, or is it changed?
Yeah, we've seen close to a completed cut of vinyl, so he's still tinkering with it. But yeah, that's what you'll see. And yeah, he went through with the director of his stature and capability and talent. It's a different. The job is just different. It's not. He doesn't need. We do believe in our value and what we offer to material and to talent, but I think it'd be hubristic to say that he needs our feedback in some profound way. He knows what he's doing in a deep way, and that's why you entrust the pilot and you trust the show to him. So for the most part, you're saying, no, please, paint, and it's not as you don't simply say thank you, but there's a dialogue about casting and process, but and he's a very open and gracious man, to be honest. He's brilliant and confident in what he does, so very easy collaborator, to be honest. But it's an easy collaborator because he's good at what he does. So that's what that's what makes your job. These jobs are easy when they're that good at what they do.
So the talent that you talked about, talent seems to be really key to everything at HBO, and nurturing that talent. I know you said Tim Van Patten, wasn't he on Sopranos?
Tim was, yes, exactly.
So is that important to the process? Do you keep a lot of key creative talent, move them from one show to another?
You hope to, an aspiration, if they've had a good time and they're still inspired, that they'll stick around and continue to work. They're the lifeblood of what we do. And so we're a curatorial body in many ways, so it's our subjective taste, and so what we try to promise to viewers and to our audience is, here's a collection of things that we think are very good and we think you'll agree. And so we have, so it's our subjective taste, which, like for all of us, at some level it's gut, and an informed gut, ideally, right? But you're at the mercy of what they do, and we hope you endeavor to make it as supportive and engaging a process, not just from the creative side, but from marketing, publicity. It's holistic. I think it's still somewhat distinctive is they're engaged in everything. So their feedback is on everything. So I think you also see a continuity not just in the show itself, but how it's presented to the market, how it's presented to audiences. I think creators appreciate that dynamic, and I don't think we're ever there's a mis-sell, where you're selling something dishonestly, and so it's careful. There are no orphans at HBO. Every show is treated, and every creator is treated with the same level of engagement.
And the development process itself, Is it a longer process? Do you think it's the same as other networks, or is it quite a tricky development process? Do you have a lot in development? I'm only going from what I hear.
Yes. No, I'm sure it's different because it's, these are idiosyncratic jobs, and each company has its own house style. We do have a lot in development, and the process varies, frankly, by some of it's driven by us, and some of it we try and match both our development and, frankly, production and current to the talent themselves. And that's not a cop-out. It's, people have different working styles, and our method tries, try to fit towards theirs. We've had shows that emerge after many, many years. Vinyl was in development for quite a while to get it right. So at the same time, you don't want to make people sit around waiting. We do our best to not have people waiting for an answer once it's done on some level. It should be, it should be complete, and ideally we've given people a good experience. We probably develop a bit too much, and we're looking at that now, and you sort of go in waves. At the same time, you also want to be, open to someone saying, you may not see this yet, but I really believe in it. And if they're talent you respect, we're inclined to give them a crack at it. So some of it, in those, we engage in speculative development probably more than others, and some gems do emerge from that. So you don't want to be, there's a risk of being too open and not discern, but there's a risk of being sort of too close as well. And and we veer, like a lot of places, we'll sort of veer in either direction. So.
And in terms of your current development, are there things you're specifically looking for? Obviously, we'll provide it if there are, but
yes,
I'm sure there's people who want that. But
it's the hardest question to get asked.
Are there genres that you haven't got? Are there places that you feel HBO hasn't gone to that it should go to?
The simple and kind of boring but true answer is, you're looking for great things. Okay, so True Detective is if I describe it as a one-liner, you're like, okay, it's a serial killer, there's a sort of mass murder in the South, and two detectives have to solve the crime over 10 years. You reduce a lot of our stuff to the one-liner, and it's, what it actually is really interesting, but you wouldn't know that until you got it. So the short answer is no. The longer answer is you're looking for a lot of these genres we haven't been engaged in before. So you look at Westworld, where we're thinking about it would be great to do science fiction, and what would that look like on HBO? Absolutely. And when JJ pitched that to us based on the movie, it was incredibly inspiring. And Joe Nolan and Lisa Joy, who are also married, showers, when they came into it, Joe is someone we've been looking in particular to work with for a long time, and the two of them together have been amazing. So occasionally there are areas you're thinking about trying, and there's certain genres that no one's ever able to crack, and so that's a bit of, for better or worse, that's catnip to us. So
which ones are they?
Anything, we have a music show obviously coming in vinyl, but the musical, right? That's just like, can you really do? Everyone. Here you had Dennis. You had a very specific version that was brilliant in Dennis Potter, but that's there are these things that no one's really cracked yet, and so you think about, and but I don't think we necessarily look for it particularly consciously, except what's not on the air. That's what we'll tend to think about. So when you're trying to have a diverse experience for an audience, and that can both on a genre level, and now increasingly, the way people are rightly using the word diversity, we definitely want more of that on the air, and that's been something we've been very conscious of the last year or two, and working very hard to correct.
And do you think your development needs and the way you develop has changed since Netflix and Amazon came into the market so strongly, since they're making high-end, expensive drama?
Our development experience?
Well, I mean, it's specifically do you feel you're more competing with them, or are you looking for shows that make you feel more HBO?
Oh, I see. I think you don't. I mean, thus far we haven't tried not to overcorrect to the competition. So two things have happened with increased players in the American television market, which is there's a lot more television being made, a lot more dramas being made, and a lot of them are making their way over here. The other consequence of this, though, is a lot more people are trying to make television and are pitching and entering it. So there's also a lot more to choose from as a commissioner, to use the local term. So we're focused on doing what we do well, and not being too distracted by it. obviously, we've responded to distribution changes. So we've introduced HBO now, so to match, so consumers, whether you're in the cable ecosphere or not, you can get it. But we're trying to do still our thing, which is shows we believe in, we think are great, talent we think are amazing, and put the things out there that we think are best. So you have to look at everything. To do that well, I think I was always trained to read and watch as much of everything as you can. So you don't be above what's happening out there. I think that kind of arrogance kills you, and we I think try to stay as close to the ground as possible. To kind of keep focused on what we do well.
And this is tricky, but do you think, because again, coming back to money, the amount of money that's spent on an HBO show is like legendary. I mean, budgets are getting bigger in the UK, but they're still not approaching that. Does the spend come into your mind at the beginning, or is it literally the creative idea?
A bit of both. Certainly there are limits, right? So you're aware of that when you're working, but you're trying. No, a bit of both. I mean, for the most part, you're thinking, does this have the chance? It sounds corny and earnest, but you really are thinking, like, can this be great? Like, is there a path to do something amazing there? That is the first thing you're really thinking about. And then, yeah, absolutely. If you have a number of really expensive shows, then you do have to think, okay, can we do another really big one? And also, there's a certain kind of experience that the large-scale productions give that is great. At the same time, you want to complement that with other visual experiences too. And so it's not just about money. Not every show should feel like a big scale production, I think, at least in our, because you want to have, you want variety. So you think about that too, and we have budgets, so we do have to make decisions. We make creative and budgetary decisions.
Spend whatever it takes to create dragons. I am getting your questions if you're tweeting them, but I'm just being really selfish at the moment. But there is a really important one there, which is Jon Snow still alive? Does not put you on the spot in any way.
Jon Snow is absolutely dead.
Okay.
Sorry.
So Game of Thrones, did you have any idea the scale of reaction you get, quite how phenomenal it would become internationally?
No, is a short answer. I think what we thought at the time, the show began before my time, but it exploded, I guess, since I arrived. So that is not me taking that show. But meaning, yes, please. George had written this obviously great book, and it's a great series of books. David and Dan written a pretty amazing pilot script, and the nature of having that book was there was an architecture for a first season. And speaking of genres, we hadn't done medieval fantasy, right? So what in American television that had meant a certain kind of show like Xena. I mean, really, very syndicated television. Really, it was like a barren landscape. So you had Lord of the Rings happen, right? Culturally, but it was it was something seemingly like, why would we do it? And that becomes exciting. As you all know the program, from the beginning it was a character-based show about politics, family, loyalty, good and evil. The nature. Is virtue have any tie to success and power? Is it complete? It's very classical, deep themes and deep, and brilliantly expressed and explored. That was the show. That's what the show actually is. It has all these other amazing trappings that they're not just filigree. They're part of the core pleasures of it. But underneath it, that's what it was. So there was a continuity with our other programming, and you can start from that place. So you think, very humbly, you think this will be engaging, intelligent, and worth a go. And on some level, yes, in the background you're aware, it has a costume drama aspect. There is a brilliant British cast. So it has a chance. Why was that decision made? Do you know why use British actors? Because obviously it's set nowhere. It's set nowhere. Well, this is more a question for Brits, I think, than Americans. But period. British English is period. Right, so So if it's Russia in the 15th century, they speak British English. They don't speak Russian. So that's true as well. So one was the ability to. in all seriousness, the ability to produce it here was vital, and that you could produce it in the United Kingdom because it didn't make sense to do it in America for all the obvious reasons. So there was both a production aspect to both landscape, crew, just the ability to execute that show felt like it had to be done here. And then it's an English language show, and the pool of actors, it's no secret, the pool of actors here is, sui generis, right? So, and there are Americans in it, as you know, but they speak, there's some continuity of accent. What's interesting is, though, for, obviously Brits appreciate the wild variations on the show, but the rest of the world, it doesn't really matter. So it sort of plays as one thing, and then the show breaks into native tongue, Valerian, with subtitles. So it gives it a it's part of, to be honest, actually, so I'm thinking out loud, it's part of the role creation of it, to be honest. It kind of creates a consistent language that's being spoken, and the audience can just go with it. Because I think what was vital to us, if you see first season talking about not just budget, but style, the VFX, the visual effects, there were set extensions and landscape, but dragons were minimal. So the idea was also, in a way, it was, the fantasy was a bit of a Trojan horse. And so it played like a medieval drama, fundamentally, for a season, and the fantasy elements have emerged over time. And so the British quality to that obviously helps guarantee a really, really high level.
And it's the most illegally downloaded.
Yes.
Does that really bother you? And how can HBO try and stop things like that, or is it just impossible? Because it happens each year, doesn't it? Each time it feels like it's not going to happen, then the last minute it happens.
It's a conversation for government ministers as well. From what I gather, the ability to technologically stop it is really low. Obviously it is, Richard Plepler has talked about this. It's flattering, obviously, it means that people really want to see the show. And I would say HBO now informed that a little bit, which is have a means, that for people to access, have a means for those without cable to access it legally. It is what it is, as I say.
Moving on to your new shows that we saw a bit of there, I know we've got other clips to watch. Waterworld, is the film just the inspiration? Is the film...
That was a slip, Nicola.
Well, what did I call it?
It's not Waterworld. Lots of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yes, no. Westworld, sorry.
Sorry, Westworld. Was the film literally the starting point? Is it an adaptation? Is it...
The film is, if you've seen it, it's great for what it is, but it's a pretty singular idea and kind of like a brilliant Twilight Zone episode. So really, JJ and then Joan and Lisa, really are using the premise as a leaping off point. So the film was, if you're to see it, is told from basically guests in a theme park going for the weekend, and it was kind of Michael Crichton working out some of the ideas he later kind of realized more fully, I think, in Jurassic Park. In this case, the show is told primarily from the robot's perspective, as they're just at the birth of beginning of consciousness, and you're in the world behind the scenes, those who've designed the park, and sort of seeing both kind of what corporate life is like for them and sort of how their relationship to these beings affects them.
Should we have a look at the clip? Shall we see if there's anyone else with any questions? And then I'll go to this one here.
So they're not tweeting.
I don't know who this is from.
Hi there, my name's Connor, I'm from the BBC. I just want to ask you, Michael, if there's one show in particular out of HBO's history that defines what HBO is. Can you name that show and why?
I think there are a number of shows that would fit that category. So I think it depends on the day of the week. Yes, I'm trying. We have lots of children, so I don't want to favor it. The Wire, I guess I'll speak about The Wire specifically because it had a big impact. It had specific impact on me. Because I was film producer. I guess I subscribed to HBO, but I hadn't seen the show in a way, many people had not seen the show while it was airing. And so when somewhere around season 4, I don't know when, it took off here at some point as well, but around season 4, it kind of got a critical mass of attention. And I can watch the whole run, at least those first 4 seasons, obviously the 5th was to come, in about a 6-week period. And that shook me up in terms of what's possible in television, almost way nothing else had at that point. And I loved and admired The Sopranos tremendously, but The Wire, for at least for how it spoke to me, it was, the thing that blew me away is there was no way to do it in cinema. Like I was acutely aware of that. The both multi-season structure of it, it was like, it was both. There was a lot of talk about it as a great novel, but I thought actually didn't mean very much. To repivot and look at a metropolitan area from a different angle, season to season, almost an anthropological perspective, and to be that sophisticated, that intelligent, that engaging, that important. 10 years later in the States now, a lot of bad things obviously have been happening in the last year in terms of race and crime and police. And that show, in a way, I think looks, part of the reason maybe it didn't connect at the time was ahead of its time. So obviously, what you're seeing reaction politically in the States right now, they were exploring a decade ago in that show, and so to succeed on that many levels, to be both a profound statement about American life, about race, about bureaucracy writ large. There are a lot, I'm in a corporate structure, you're at the BBC. So, the amount you can just explore about how bureaucracy functions in that show. So the range of stuff, but at the same time to be that effective a basic drama where there's endless characters you fall in love with, and the notion that, it's a thing you aspire to, which is the notion of the person in the back of the room who maybe had a line or two, 12 episodes later shows up again and starts to have their own run. It was incredible. So in a way that when I watched it had this impact of me of, oh wait, shoot, something is happening, and it was, to be honest, as a film producer, I was intimidated by it, and so when this opportunity came along, it informed me a lot in my thinking about why I should do it, to be honest. So.
Lydia, just behind.
Hi, my name is Lydia Yeoman, I'm a writer. I just wanted to ask you, you're talking about the different levels of development when something reaches you. Sometimes it's just an idea, sometimes it's 2 scripts and pilot, and something I've heard a lot is actually it helps to go in not too developed, because executives like to put their own spin on it, feel involved, and if you go in and it's too far along, then all they can say is no. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Do you have a preference? Do you like it when it comes to you not fully developed, because therefore you can feel involved and invested? And what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a producer question more than an executive question. It would be interesting also to hear your thoughts on it, because no, there's no real preference. If it's I guess the range of elements in that. If it's a writer who you have a tremendous regard for, and they have the beginning of something, that may be enough to say, like, let's give it a go, let's try. But as an executive, absolutely, if someone delivers you the thing you are desperate for, and there are a lot of executives in this room, rarely happens, is the brilliantly rendered script with a brilliant vision for the whole show to come, if that lands on your desk, Mazel tov, you declare victory. It doesn't happen very often. So of course, if it was fully baked and brilliant, what the downside, the danger is as a seller, and I used to be a seller, is it's fully there, but not yet perfect. And so then what then is more intimidating as a buyer now is you're in more of a yes/no conversation. Because you basically feel like you owe it to the producer and to the creator to say, this is clear, this is close to what it's going to be. So if we're going to take it on, we have to feel like we're more likely than not going to make it. So it kind of brings you to an ultimate answer right away. So it also depends on your gambling instincts, because, but if it's brilliant and perfect, great, but, and some people don't know, particularly if they're a newer creator, you may want to see the advantage of development for them is a process of the idea, not just the pilot script building, but really their vision for the show building. And ideally in the process of development, different kinds of questions they ask of themselves, we ask of them, ideally open their minds up to think about television. We have a lot of first-time creators in all areas. My comedy counterpart, Casey Boyes, has a number of them, and so the development process can be very vital to them kind of wrapping their head around what series television really is. So, that's the part of the process I think we don't, I wouldn't apologize for. I think it's really valuable. I think most creators would say, who've gone through it, I guess when it's successful, we'll say that. That's the value of it frequently. So we'll have novelists, film writers who've never done it before, playwrights, and so the development process sort of allows them to kind of come to see it. So it's more about what's valuable to them, but yeah, if you have a great script, great, we can go make it. It's just, they really come that way, so.
Anyone else?
Michael, David Graham's my name. You say that you see and watch everything. It's a very practical question. Presumably that means all the other channels as well as your own channel. How the hell do you do that? Is there a discipline here? Do you allocate time in the day? You've got to have a life?
Yes. Good question. And it's sampling. It's the truth. So you're trying to, and within reason. What's changed now is, if you'd asked that 6 years ago, that was a more, practical question. So you could at least watch then. I was pretty, some of this is my background, just sort of a couple of places I worked. You could really watch all the American pilots, that were going. And so you may then only pick a couple of those shows for broadcast to actually watch it more of, but you'd at least have a basic information on what's happening. And you kind of keep up with the movies and theater, and it is, some of it's work is the truth and some of it's not. It all informs my work, I guess, but that's the joy of these jobs. You're doing things that are natural, things you are getting paid to do things you would do if you weren't getting paid to do them. And you're trying to get just a read on what's happening, and the longer you do it, the quicker, sometimes you gotta be careful with this, but the quicker your trigger can be to say, feel like, is this really relevant to me and my team and what we're doing, or to the company at large, or not? If it's not, you'll bail fast, is the truth. So there's, the thing you never confess is, there's a lot of unfinished viewing and reading in that as well.
Someone in the middle up there. Sorry.
Can you go over there?
Hello, I'm Georgie. I'm from the BBC. I was just wondering if you could talk through your career path, maybe your early career, and I guess how you made decisions along that journey, whether you knew you were going to end up as a channel exec or a film exec, or how that happened.
No, I went to law school, so I was like most people in LA. I started as an assistant for a producer, and it was a relatively small company. So I often advise people. Everyone's advice is anecdotal and based on their experience. So I often advise people to choose smaller companies because they need more of their resources. So if you're an assistant, it's easier to make a mark. So I was promoted there and was a junior executive there for a couple of years, and then worked for Scott Root Productions. Scott's a important film and theater, and now TV producer as well as in America. And a lot of sort of my habits and training came from working there. To the question earlier, read everything, see everything, look at it all, and particularly I think relevant to HBO, which is if you're going to try to do stuff that's great, don't be above the business. You know, it was sort of a big lesson always, like engage with it, and then be single-minded about pursuing things you think are great. And from there, then I went to Scott Free and was a producer there under Ridley Scott and Tony Scott, and that was, you know, I learned most of what I know from that experience and working very closely with Sir Ridley. I'm in the United Kingdom, I guess I should say, and was, you know, that's a soup. You know, it's a soup to nuts place. You know, so no, you know, the biggest lesson there is, you know, there is no detail too small to pay attention to, and so you that would certainly be carried forward to HBO. So from you know, straight piece of dialogue to the, you know, every aspect of production, and just be inside all of it. And it was just a tremendous experience working for him and with him. And then I know I had no idea, you know, 15 years, you know, I've been in the business, I guess, 15 years now. No, I went to work in film. I was a movie buff, and you know, founded Film Magazine in college, and programmed our repertory programming in college. So I figured I'd be work in film forever. And TV changed, you know, movies changed, and I wasn't even sure I wanted to be you know, I figured I'd be a movie producer. That was what I really got into it for. And when this opportunity presented itself, and to be honest, I'd been living in London because I've been on and off for a couple of years, so I hadn't seen a lot of the shows, new shows, because where I couldn't get Sky for whatever reason. Sorry, Cameron. Wherever I was living, wouldn't get, you know, so you couldn't see anything. So I came back, I watched everything really quickly, and I had and sort of clear insight. You know, what HBO, now with television in general, but certainly HBO was doing was kind of what I got into movies to do, which is I love that, you know, like all kinds of genres, and it's no secret that what you're allowed to do in certainly American cinema, but increasingly everywhere, is narrowed considerably. So, you know, you can, whereas HBO, you do gangster epic on Monday, a medieval fantasy on Tuesday, a family drama on Wednesday, you know, an A&R show on Thursday, like that kind of variety of programming. And increasingly, I also found the kind of talent I was most excited to work with, both on the writer level and on director level, are, you know, that's why they're all in television now, frankly. I mean, it's becoming harder and harder to find a way to work with them in the commercial American cinema. So I just, you know, I thought we'd give it a go, to be honest, and it's been amazing. You know, I just feel mostly lucky is the truth. I was given the opportunity at the right moment. I had no idea that sort of how much would change so rapidly, and I feel really blessed and fortunate to be, you know, HBO and television now, to be honest.
Question here at the front.
What's your view on the lack of disabled on-screen talent, and is there anything that HBO might be able to do about rectifying that in the future, or is there anything that HBO may be thinking about doing in the future?
It's a very good question, and I think it ties into, the answer is not enough in terms of what we're doing now, but the answer is can we do something about it? Yes, and we ought to. And it speaks to, you know, we've been, in the way that I think there's a panel tomorrow, diversity in television is being discussed a lot here too. So it's it's not discussed enough in those diversity conversations. Some of this is about, and I'll talk a little bit what sort of makes things occasionally more difficult for HBO. Some of the talent friendliness can be a hindrance in this, to be honest, because certainly on the on-screen side, I think the behind the scenes is a little easier to solve too. But on screen, that's about casting. You know, and that's about not having such rigorous definitions of what's an acceptable person to come in and read for roles. Whether it's about, you know, their physical ability, their race, their gender, their ethnicity, there's still too much restrictiveness around it. And so it's not, you know, so by the time we bear serious responsibility for all this, but frequently by the time we're looking at casting options, all of those possibilities have been winnowed away, and frequently never even kind of emerged to the talent themselves. So, you know, we're having a very rigorous conversation inside the building right now, which I think will increasingly be something we're having outside the building, about being much more robust and engaged with our showrunners, with it's not our casting directors on the shows about how frankly how they look at people, who comes in and who doesn't come in, and why those people aren't coming in. And I do think the more we as a broadcaster, our peers, I won't say our competitors, be more collaborative, are engaged in it directly, I think we can have a very sizable impact in a relatively short period of time. I think sometimes we're actually too cautious about owning our voice in this space, and I also think it'd be good for the disabled community to speak loudly about this issue too, because it makes much more of a difference than people appreciate, and it's heard. Particularly a company like ours, we're a private company, and the BBC is obviously not, but we take seriously our role in certainly American society as a progressive force in it, and so hold us accountable. It's a short version.
I'm sorry, I'm afraid we've got to stop now, but I just want to thank the sponsors, Creative Scotland and the British Film Commission, and thank you, Michael. That was really interesting.
Thank you, Nicola. No, thank you. Thank you.